Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I know we are on our way through these different time periods that are being talked about in the 1920s, and a lot of these different changes that are happening in society are going to lead us to the Great Depression, which happens at the end of the 1920s into the 1930s. So we've been talking about all the different changes that are happening throughout society, whether it be women's issues, the Harlem Renaissance, consumerism, different things that are happening in terms of social things that are developing, and ultimately it's going to lead us to a very, very dark time in our country, which is the Great Depression. So this is something that we're going to do actually in class, so you don't have to do it, but I want you to think about these questions as you're looking at this video. Is the government responsible for our economic and social well-being? And you should ultimately have some reasons to explain why or why not you might think that is the case. How should we help poor people out of poverty? Is it, as individual citizens? Is it as a government? Number 3, today, which citizens in our country need more support in terms of economic aid? So what groups do those people stem from? And then give examples, the 4th one, of the types of support they would need. So these are things that we're going to do in class again, but I want you to come with some background prepared for it. Okay? All right, so causes of the Great Depression. We had a number of things that led us into the Great Depression. It wasn't just the stock market crash. First and foremost, wealth is unequally distributed among the population. So the rich have a lot of money and the poor don't have money. So there is a small percentage of people at the top that have the majority of the wealth in the country, while poor people don't have. The largest percentage of people are the poor people that don't have money. A lot of different people are starting to get invested into installment plans. And an installment plan is the idea that you're going to pay, perhaps $10 for something up front and then pay for the rest of it in installments. So sure, I want to get an installment plan for a refrigerator, but I also want one for a stove and I want one for a car. So we're going to be on a number of different installment plans to be able to pay slowly over time, but those accumulating number of installment plans are going to be one of the things that will drive people into debt. The third one here, an old and decaying industrial base makes the U.S. industry less competitive. So after we get out of World War I, we are not as competitive, industrially speaking, as we should be. And we don't keep up with the rest of the world and see what the rest of the world is doing. And they're moving forward and advancing, and we kind of are stuck in our initial phase of the Industrial Revolution. So we have to kind of revamp our industry to make us be able to be competitive on a global scale. And then what we do produce in terms of industry and in agriculture, we overproduce. So if you're growing crops of corn, you and your neighbor and 10 of the other people in your neighborhood are growing corn. If we all have corn, what's going to happen to the price of that corn? Well, it's going to go down because there's no demand for it. So people are going to be only willing to pay a cheaper amount because they could go and get it somewhere else. So if there's not a very high demand for something and we're overproducing, it's going to drive the price of that good down. And then we go through some economic policies that are very unsuccessful at the government level. So we'll talk more specifically about these when we get to some activities in class. But these are kind of a lot of the different causes of the Great Depression. And then ultimately it kind of spirals into the stock market crash that leads to a financial panic. Okay? So again, it's not just the stock market crash that causes the Great Depression. Another thing that's happening at the same time is that when we're overproducing this agriculture, we at some point stop and say, okay, we're gonna pay farmers to not farm their goods, and that's going to come further down the road. But what's happening is that there's a severe drought through the Midwest and the Southwest of the United States, and it causes something that's called the Dust Bowl. And the Dust Bowl is, as you can see in this picture, it's kind of like a big snowstorm, but it's with dust. And you can't, you could shovel it, but there's nowhere else to put it, and it's not going to melt. So it's not like snow. And it gets into your lungs and into the nooks and crannies of any kind of mechanics that you have. So a car, it gets into small places everywhere. And so places were infiltrated by sand in this dust storm. The Dust Bowl was primarily in kind of that region of Colorado Kansas, New Mexico, and Texas. Oklahoma was definitely affected as well. But we had instances of dust all the way in Minnesota that it affected our weather system all the way up there because of this. And so the drought caused the topsoil of the land to be loose, and then it would be kind of circled around and cycled around as the storm came through. So it was over an extended period of time. It wasn't just like, there's a storm and we'll have a snow day, but, people were suffering greatly as a result of this, because you certainly can't farm on that land. And now it's causing people to lose the agriculture and to lose the farming money that they had. So this also contributes to the Great Depression. There's another picture of the Dust Bowl and the effects that it could have on an area. That's a car that's stuck in dust. So it's a lot like a really bad snowstorm, but it's not going to melt and go anywhere. You're stuck with it. And since they're in the middle of a drought, nothing's going to wet it down and cause it to stay on the land, and it's obviously not good for farming, so it was just really an ugly situation that people were in. A lot of people who lost money as a result of this loss of agriculture went to California. So more Oklahomans reached California via the cotton fields of Arizona. So people picked up their goods. They couldn't salvage their fields, so they wanted to move somewhere and start over. And so this was also contributing to the general state of despair in the country at the time. So here is how we kind of got into this depression. And some of these characteristics you can see from what's been happening the last few years. But first of all, we start at number 1 here. So cash-strapped consumers postpone spending because they think prices will fall further. So, you wait to buy any kind of major goods, a house, a car, or even small things because you think, well, eventually it's going to have to go on sale if they want to get rid of it. So then businesses cut prices to improve sales, and that cuts their profits down. So the businesses know that people are waiting for them to cut prices. They do cut the prices, and then it drives down their profits. Because their profits are driven down, number 3 here, businesses cut workers in their production, so people lose their jobs and they produce less, which moves us into number 4. People without jobs have less money to spend, and people that do have jobs spend conservatively. So because people aren't spending money, some businesses close their doors and others are forced to lower prices even further to get more people to buy goods. And to get them to buy goods, they're hoping the prices will fall, and it continues. It's a cyclical thing that happens, and it continues in a downward spiral. So in the center here, falling prices might sound good to consumers, but a persistent decline can create a spiral of falling profits, closing factories, shrinking employment, and increasing defaults on loans. So again, when you find something on sale, be thankful that it's on sale, but think about all the implications that has on the bigger system as a whole. Same type of kind of cyclical thing here. Lower prices for goods and services, things deflate. Because of that, there's a smaller cash flow, and there's less profit for companies, which results in layoffs, which is increased unemployment. So people are spending less on goods and services, which means that we're overproducing goods and services, which leads to lower prices, which leads to a smaller cash flow. So it kind of just is, again, a cyclical thing that's happening that causes us to go into this Great Depression. This is a picture of the stock market, and I don't know how familiar you are with the stock market, but we'll talk a little bit more about this in class. What's happening is that the prices of stocks are going up, and then there's the Black Tuesday that causes a significant crash in prices, and then people become insecure about what's happening on the stock market, so they all want to sell. And so if you have everybody looking to sell their stocks, nobody's there to buy it, but it drops drastically the price in what's happening with the stocks that are still in the market. So people are looking to sell, nobody's there to buy, and so they keep reducing the price of their stocks to get rid of them and to liquidate them so that at least they can get some cash out of the situation. So our effects of the Depression: there's widespread unemployment nationally. As a result of this, there's hunger and poverty, and people become homeless because they can't afford to pay the mortgages on their homes. Industrial and farm production falls because they can't afford the people to be doing the production, and they can't afford the prices that it would cost to do this production. There's a world economic crisis that develops as a result of the starting depression in the United States. The Democrats win a victory in 1932 with FDR, and Roosevelt will initiate the New Deal, which is his way of helping us to get out of the Great Depression. And that's all.